FMCSA bases all their fines on the company's gross revenue. So the more successful a carrier is, then the heftier the fine's going to be. And then you also have to have a budget for your compliance and safety, because that can put you out of business just as quick as not having drivers or not having trucks is not being in compliance.
Hello, everyone. Today we have a special guest. It's Lucas. He is a retired DOT enforcement officer from Kentucky State Police, right?
Yep.
Or
Yep.
yep. And he's been on the force for many, many years, more than 20 years. And now we have a privilege of working with Lucas closely because he agreed to serve as a consultant for AIST Safety Consulting, and he has been providing invaluable assistance to our team for around 2 years now. So we're gonna talk about that. We're also gonna talk about just general safety topics and some events that have been all over the news recently that are related to trucking. So thank you, Lucas, for being here today.
Oh, thank you guys.
Right. And I guess the first question that everybody are concerned about is about the new regulations. And Lucas, with your 20 years as a DOT inspector, what have you seen changed recently?
The biggest thing is in enforcement is always, it's not because I feel like violations and regulations, they come and go, but the biggest thing in enforcement has always been technology. I mean, technology is just always creating new platforms for enforcement, and now enforcement's just so it causes everything to react quicker. So, I mean, with
Mhm.
the inspections going through quicker and things, when I first started, we hand wrote inspections and then you turn them in. Well, now everything's on a computer. So now violations that occur, they're showing up quicker in companies' profiles, and it's causing safety score to go up even quicker. So I think the biggest change is just technology.
I'm
Speaking
sorry.
of technology, there's a lot of talk lately from FMCSA and DOT about using artificial intelligence, right, AI, for enforcement needs, and specifically in audits, like when auditing a large fleet, for example, a large carrier with hundreds of drivers and trucks, they would just feed it into AI, and AI would just help identify problem areas right away. Do you think that's like realistic, and will that help with audits?
I mean, it could possibly happen. I mean, the world's changing so much with the AI technology. I personally, I mean, I still wish it would be kind of that they would use it just as a tool and not a standard that they use. It could just aid in the enforcement or the investigation. Because I think that, I mean, um, going forward, I mean, they need to, I guess, kind of just create kind of a good mesh between using those tools, but not just relying on them.
Yeah, but we're not seeing anything like that yet, right?
No,
If
no.
you, yeah, yeah, it's too soon.
Lucas, do you think the audits are happening faster right now? Because I remember a while ago, and it was like a couple years ago before the AI was so widely popular. So audit could take months for some of the companies, like the compliance review, investigation. Like with the help of AI and new technologies, is that like accelerate the process right now, or
Yeah, I mean, that's what I guess what I was trying to say is I could see it being a good tool for investigators to use AI to speed up, the audit and compliance review process. And, but as far as them just turning over the investigations to I don't see that anytime soon, but it could happen.
Mhm, mhm.
right? Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah, let's get back to the ground and talk about some issue that has been affecting a lot of our clients, a lot of their drivers, the English proficiency, right? We do see those out of services for not being able to speak English sufficiently, right, on a daily basis. And one of the things you've been helping us with is actually testing drivers for English proficiency. So how has this experience been for you? Was it, is there any insights? Have you learned anything new, or like, do you fail a lot of drivers?
Uh, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, I guess I fail more than I pass. But what I'm seeing is they're understanding what I'm asking. It's just returning the information that I need is the biggest struggle. And I think a lot of that falls back to carriers could get them prepared more for inspections. So therefore, they're not as nervous when they're dealing with officers and in a they know they're getting tested on their ability to communicate. I think that would be a big help. And then just practicing with drivers. I think that would go a long way. Just put them through mock inspections or just ask them the mock questions that they're going to get asked at scale facilities. And I think that's the biggest thing between the being able to communicate back to me and keeping their nerves in check. I think are the two biggest reasons they fail. They all seem to nod and understand the questions, or for the most part, the questions that I'm asking. They just can't really return the answer.
And you guys are talking about the classes that we provide, right? For the drivers, like any driver can check the knowledge of
Yes.
English language, English sufficiency, and Lucas can check. Yeah, I think they are nervous because they see the former DOT inspector and they go through that memories, I guess. Maybe that's what makes them so nervous.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a great experience because that's how it should be. Like that's a real DOT inspector, former DOT inspector, but with a lot of years of experience, and that's what makes it special. Like to be at their place where it's how it is, how it should be. In terms of the English language, do you see like you mentioned that a lot of drivers are unfortunately failing. Do they come back to you after this? Do they improve or how that
Yeah, I've
works?
had several take the test or the evaluation numerous times, and you can see a little
Okay.
bit of improvement each time. And that's the reason why I think a lot of it has to do with nerves, and then they're also getting prepared a little better about the questions and the I guess the verbiage that would be used at the scale facility. Because I mean, I don't give them a whole lot of coaching or
Mhm.
anything
Right.
during the evaluation. It's more or less exactly what they would go through at a scale facility or if they're stopped roadside. So I think the getting used to just communicating in that way has helped some of them, and just calming down. I mean, just being calm.
Yeah, yeah. There's one aspect about English language proficiency that is not talked about much. Everybody's talking about, oh, driver is not able to understand road signs, but there's another issue that not many people know about or realize. It's communicating with the inspector during the vehicle inspection, right, at the way station, and we talked about it in one of our early conversations. So can you talk about like what the risks are for the inspecting officer if driver cannot properly understand what is being
Yeah,
told?
I mean, the biggest thing is, I mean, an inspector's looking at is, can I safely communicate the things I need to communicate to give the truck a thorough inspection? And that's the biggest concern for an inspector is you want to be able to check the truck, get it at either a level 2 or level 1 inspection, make sure it's safely on the highway, and you can't do that when someone don't understand the basic commands of when to check lights, where to stop at, especially if you're measuring brakes underneath the truck. I mean, it's impossible to communicate that safely if someone doesn't know the English language. Uh, so yeah, it's not just about road signs or that. It's more about just all around safety, on the highway and you're going through inspections.
And what can fail a driver instantly? Like, let's say, like maybe if he's tired or if he's like, I know, and we tell people, tell drivers, like if you feel tired, you shouldn't be driving. You should stay at the rest area, or you should not go at all. But besides feeling tired or fatigue, what else can place a driver out of service?
Uh, oh well, there's numerous things that can place a driver out of service. Fatigue is definitely one of them. One of the most common ones you'll run into is expired medical certificates that that or they have a medical certificate, they've just not got it certified and sent in, so their CDLs are expired or invalid. That's one of the most common ones that I saw was when they combined the CDLs and medicals, they didn't send in their medical to the proper place, so therefore their CDLs got ruled invalid, and now they're operating without a CDL. So, yeah, there's numerous out of service issues that can arise for a driver.
Mhm. But what can fail them by having a conversation with you? Like,
Oh well, just
what's-
fatigue, nerves,
Mhm.
and a lot of times it's just not understanding the process of what they're going through, the whole inspection process. I mean, they don't understand, how to communicate the things that I need and then what an officer and inspector is going to ask them to do during the inspection. That's also
Mhm.
a very common one. And that goes back to I feel like if carriers were able to kind of coach their drivers a little more about the inspection process, then they're calmer, they understand what the inspector's looking for, and then the language barrier doesn't show up as bad. And another one I found that can occur at the scales is accents. I mean, everybody, they a lot of times officers they can't understand because of the way that the accent that the person has, and so I think a lot of times it's I wish inspectors would spend a little more time just trying to listen a little bit, to pick up that
Mhm.
they're actually communicating what they need to. Could just be a little trouble for them to or for the inspector to understand.
No, I agree. Yeah, that's sometimes drivers get misjudged, and everybody has an accent. Even American people have accents, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
I know all about that.
Lucas has a slight Kentucky accent.
With
Like
the
he's very
rules
proud.
regarding English, not a new rule, but there was the old rule that got reapplied, so to speak, right? When the use of like translator devices and things like that, like Google Translate and things like that, that was sort of allowed, right? Or it wasn't considered a violation when such device was used, but now it is back to being prohibited and it is a violation if you can communicate mainly using those devices. In your opinion, is that how it's supposed to be, or those devices actually help?
I mean, in my opinion, as long as someone, can get through basic understanding of English with, the road signs and then basic communication with an officer, I don't really have a problem with using an aid to help with the inspection process. Now, a lot of people view it completely different and disagree, but there's just so many interworking parts to an inspection that if an aid needs to be used for me to safely check the truck and then make sure that the truck is safe for the highway, I don't really see a problem with that, but I don't see them allowing it any time in the future. This is just such a kind of a hot topic with FMCSA that I see them kind of
Mhm.
sticking to their guns on that.
Right, right. Yep. But yeah, I agree that test part that they introduced, that's obviously and definitely should be performed without any kind of aid. But what's beyond that, when it goes to the nitty-gritty, yes, I'm with you on that. Like that's where you can use all the help that you can. Another question that we're getting all the time with the new rule that, out of service for English being strictly enforced, like what is driver supposed to do? Like when after receiving that out of service, obviously he cannot or she cannot continue the trip, right? But then as far as returning to duty, because the FMCSA didn't specify any conditions, right? Like they didn't give, okay, you have a year to learn English and then you can return, or like you take some kind of test and then you can return, nothing like that. So it's just out of service and that's it. So what are some of the recommendations for drivers and fleets? Like when should they or shouldn't they return to duty at all?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, because it's not like hours of service where they get their 10-hour break and then they can return to duty, or if it's a CDL issue, they can obtain a proper CDL and return to duty. Uh, I think that's something that FMCSA is really going to have to figure out on how we're going to get these drivers, you know, that get that out of service order or gets, removed from those drivers when they can return to work. In my opinion, if I was a carrier right now, I would sit down and try to come up with my own way of dealing with it, whether it be sending them to a training, or completing some online tests and things like that to show that we've worked with the driver. He's been studying the English language, and now we feel that he can safely get back in the vehicle.
So it's basically the confidence level of the driver and the carrier.
Yeah,
That decisive
yeah,
factor here. Okay.
Lucas, you audited a lot of companies for compliance review, right? And then you conducted hazardous inspections as well on
yeah.
hazmat companies. What usually fails a company? Like, what are the most important, like, red flags that can trigger bad rating, like a conditional or unsatisfactory rating, and get company out of business?
The most common in Kentucky, we find more carriers over their drug and alcohol policy, probably more than anything. Now, as far as failing the audits and things like that, I mean, a lot of times it was just general, I mean, just little things like uh driver qualification files. I mean, not running proper MVRs, little things like that. But as far as failing, like I mean, annual inspections was a common one, but usually not having the proper drug and alcohol policy and testing policy was probably the most common one.
And what do you think the reasons are for these failures? Is that just lack of time or lack of knowledge or just not caring enough?
It could be a little of all those. A lot of times it's just lack of knowledge of knowing exactly how they're supposed to test drivers, who's supposed to be tested, when they're supposed to be tested. And then as far as like driver qualification files and stuff, they a lot of times just didn't know what all goes into a file. And then a lot of times the companies, when you start talking to them and working with them, you'll find that they're doing a lot of the driver qualification file, but they're not documenting it. So they
Mm.
don't have the file, even though you ask them like, well, when you hire a driver, what do you do? And they say, well, I run an MVR on them, and I do all this, but they don't have an actual file. So during the audit,
Mm.
if it's not there, it didn't happen. So that's a common violation that I found during audits.
So just like lack of system, lack of organization, right? Just, you
Yeah.
just have a big mess of files that you cannot really navigate yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how easy it is to bounce back from a failure? Like, you fail a compliance review, and then what's gonna happen?
Uh,
Um,
well, usually compliance reviews would end if a carrier had, if you found enough violations, or, certain violations, that would end in a fine. And then the carrier would end up having to pay that fine, or they could lose their DOT number. Uh, they could be placed out of service, and it's the same way with a new entrant audit. Uh, those are pass fail, but if you fail one, you have to do a corrective action plan and go through all that process. And if you fail any of that, you're going to either get an out of service order, or they're going to deactivate your DOT number. So So it's not an easy bounce back, and that's one thing I think carriers don't realize is the fines that you get roadside during a violation compared to the fines you get during an audit are not even in the same ballpark. I mean, there's some hefty fines issued out during investigations.
Yeah, and I know a lot of clients say, "Oh, I heard one company got like a $100,000 fine for something." And so, like realistically speaking, let's say if you're a company with like, let's say 30 trucks plus, and you fail a compliance audit or investigation, and you get cited for multiple violations, including drug and alcohol, like a clearing house, maybe random drug testing, maybe pre-employment drug test, and other, or maybe logbooks as well, or vehicle maintenance, like truck tends to break down a lot. So, like realistically speaking, what is their fine amount? Because there's like some interesting sum of money, and people tend to scare each other. Especially it's like broken radio. It's like, oh, it's like $100,000.
And it and
That's
it
what.
can and it can be.
Mm,
FMCSA bases all their fines on the company's gross revenue. So the more successful a carrier is, then the heftier the fine's gonna be. So, and each violation has different guidelines on how much that fine amount is. So, it's kinda like getting a speeding ticket. I mean, if it's just for maybe 5 miles an hour over, it's gonna be lesser than if you're 20 miles an hour over. So, but yeah, they base everything off gross revenue, and, uh, and I mean, yeah, some single violations could be 10 or $12,000 for just that single violation.
mhm.
Wow.
And then it's accumulates, so you can have many of them, right? So,
Yeah, you could have like, I mean, for instance, if you've not done pre-employment drug screens on, then you would list that plus how many drivers you didn't do the pre-employment drug screens on. So
mhm,
if you've hired, 10 drivers in the past 12 months and none of them have pre-employment drug screens, then you're going to fine them for all 10 drivers. So yeah, it can add up very, very quick.
Uh, and if MCSA does publish all the information about companies being fined and how much and for what, so like we could actually post a link in the description of the video where you can actually see the real amounts that companies have been fined. Were there situations when, just from the initial communication with the carrier, you felt like, okay, something's off here. I need to really kind of look into this, guys.
Yeah, there's little things that you can pick up. The biggest one that I noticed is if a company starts like delaying communication back to me, if they were just stalling getting me information, it was always just an excuse of, well, I'm getting this, I'm getting that. That's when you kind of start looking a little closer, like, well, they're hiding something. Another one that we would check, I mean, pretty much instantly when we were preparing for an audit would be we would check them through a program that linked similar addresses, similar owners, similar telephone numbers, and that would show you that there's a possibility that this is a reincarnated carrier. And then we would
Mm,
start digging, even deeper before we even make contact with the company to see if it's a possible chameleon carrier. Because that's getting more and more attention with uh, with FMCSA. So, and that was one of the first things that they would want us as state investigators to let them know is if we thought this was a chameleon carrier.
yeah, yeah, that's a interesting topic actually, because yeah, it has been a lot in the news, and Sean Duffy talks about it almost every day. And like you said, there are already tools, right? There are mechanisms to find those, to identify chameleon carriers, but it didn't seem like it was like as strictly enforced in the past. Do you think that changing now? That do you think the new compliance reviews would put more focus on finding things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an issue not just for enforcement, but I think it's also an issue that we're seeing more and more in data queues that, I mean, companies also need to be on the alert that, their DOT number's not getting stolen from them. So that on top of, the carriers, the true chameleon carriers that are out there that are, hiding, trying to hide past enforcement, out of service orders, things like that. But that's one of the biggest challenges as an investigator is this company a chameleon carrier? Has this company had some identity theft go on? Or is it just a company that, the owner got in a, got kinda had a hard time financially. He shut down one DOT number and then opened another one. So that's the hard part about investigating for a reincarnated carrier is you gotta show that there was a reason for the reincarnation, that they were leaving negative history. They're wanting to leave negative history to open up a clean, I guess you'd call it like a clean bill of health. So, but I think going forward, it's going to be more and more looked at during the compliance review process, and I mean, it's going to be deeper and deeper investigated.
So what, Lucas, what's going to happen? So let's say if you, as an auditor, find this relationship, right? So you saw that this owner has multiple companies. So he has one big company and then he has multiple different companies. Maybe they are not under his name, maybe it's under his wife's name or his friend, or I don't know, any other relative or friend. And what is the worst case scenario? Like, what are the consequences of having multiple companies and hiding them? Because I know you have to reveal the company when you open up your MC number. You have to fill out an application, putting all the DOT MC numbers and name of the companies. I mean, it's not illegal to have another company, right? It just you have to reveal that information. You have to let the FMCSA know. But like in cases like this, let's say company had a bad outcome, right? Let's say they failed investigation or compliance review, and then let's see you found another companies, like couple more companies that are related to this company. So what is the outcome for it? Like,
Well, as an investigator, if we see that a company has left, they're trying to run from a negative history, either an out of service order or a fine or something like that. The first thing we're gonna approach the owner and try to get them to voluntarily combine the companies and just put them
Mhm.
together under one DOT number. Now, if they refuse to do that, then FMCSA can combine them themselves, and then also you can look at another fine for violations for operating as the chameleon carrier. But the first thing is, I mean, you want to just ask the owner, hey, we see that you've started this company, and then now you're running from your old DOT number that had an out of service order, and we'll just try to combine the two together. So that way they're always linked. And then whatever caused that out of service order, they have to get that corrected. As far as your question, yeah, it's perfectly, I mean, and it's definitely normal for an owner to have numerous DOT numbers. I think that's the thing that aggravates me the most is people hear chameleon carriers and they hear all that. And a lot of times it's a smart business move to have separate DOT numbers for different parts of your company. And that's perfectly legal as long as they don't see that you're trying to, haul the same type of product, drive the same type of trucks, and you've closed this DOT number that has a negative history and then open a new one hauling and driving the same type style trucks, then that's when they will consider you a reincarnated carrier.
but like besides reincarnation, like if they have multiple companies and they don't let FMCSA know, I know a lot of big companies, they do that. So they have one major company with like 100 trucks, and then they have small companies with like maybe one or two trucks, just as a backup company. So if something will go south on a major company, they can transfer all the trucks to the small companies, and they're not going to lose the business. So does it apply to this case scenario too?
Uh, I mean, it would just depend on, I mean, a case by case thing, but mainly they're looking at companies that, you can just clearly see that they're trying to leave a negative history on one and go to the other. Now, carriers, typically carriers can share vehicles, can share drivers. One driver can work for one company's DOT number and then leave that and go to like company's other DOT number, and all that's legal as long as you're not just showing that we're moving everything away from the bad DOT number and operating the same type of operation under a new DOT.
So it has to be a business decision rather than a safety history related decision when you start, moving
Yeah,
assets between USDOT numbers. That makes
yeah,
sense.
Yeah, and like Lucas mentioned about delays, like when audit comes, like investigation comes, and usually companies never reply right away. They always take their time because they manipulate the logbooks or they see how the logbooks looks like and they have to rewrite it, redo it, and then that's why it takes forever to submit everything. And I agree, it's very suspicious because I had a lot of cases when auditor just loses the patience and they're like, "Oh, are you ever going to send me the logbooks or what's going on at your company?" And
yeah. That's great advice to give carriers is keep those auditors happy. I mean, because they've got deadlines too. They've got multiple companies they're looking at. So the more that you delay them getting your information and kind of getting you through the audit, moving on to another company, the quicker you can get that stuff to them and keep them happy, then the easier the audit's going to be.
Another thing that FMCSA seems to be cracking down now is physical locations, right? The actual operating locations of the business. Obviously, PO boxes are not going to fly anymore. But in your experience or from your training, like how can you tell? So you come in and it's maybe a private residence, like an apartment, or maybe it's just a room with a table in it and a computer. Like how can you tell, okay, yeah, this is where they do the business, or no, this is just something they just rented yesterday and put a laptop in.
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much tell. I mean, if a trucking company is being, if they're running a true trucking company and it is their principal place of business, I mean, there's definitely signs there. I mean, a lot of times there's multiple offices, there's computers, there's things that's just laying around that you know a trucking company is going to have on hand, and when you go into like an empty office space or like you said, they used to let them for a while use PO boxes and things like that. I mean, you started getting red flags because I mean, most true trucking agencies and stuff, and they have usually a regulation book. There's usually some just other material laying around. Uh, Definitely, more than one office, that kind of thing. So it was pretty easy to tell if this was just rented for to kind of try to hide something.
And I don't know if that happened in your experience, but we deal with this quite a bit. What happens if, for whatever reason, initial contact doesn't happen? Like, say, DOT inspector tries to visit the office and like there is no office, or nobody answers the door ever, nobody answers the phone, or emails get unanswered. So what happens then?
So an auditor would have to usually you would want them to make 3 to 4 attempts, and usually we would want it to be different style attempts, not just always, using a telephone or always email. You'd want it to be a phone call, an email. Then we would try to locate them just by going to the, principal place of business, and then we would send them usually a certified letter in the mail, and then to give them a date on that certified letter that if you don't respond by this date, and then they would just go ahead and deactivate the DOT number.
is that fine too? Is that like let's say they refuse to do the investigation, like they ignored you, but the DOT is active, right? Besides deactivating the DOT, do you guys give the fine too? Do you fine the company?
Most of the time, it would just end with an out of service order and deactivation on the DOT number, and the fines would be hard to kind of, I guess, assess because you can't find the carrier until we locate them roadside. And then they would be placed out of service roadside. Usually their trucks are impounded. And then for them to, get their trucks back and all that, they would have to pass the audit. And then that's when the fines would kind of start stacking up then.
Another situation we deal with sometimes is when a company is shut down, right? Like they're going out of business. They say, okay, it's not working out for us, but there's a compliance review that they just got notified about, right? And the inspector still wants to go through the review, even though the owner says, well, we're not operating anymore. So um, does that review need to happen? Can they decline it? And if the review is completed and fines are issued, does the company have to still pay them? So have you dealt with those situations?
I've seen companies that's went out of business during the audit process. Usually we try to get them to go ahead and complete the audit, because the audit you're kind of looking at up to that date, not really future stuff. So you're looking up to that day. So I would recommend companies go ahead and go through the audit process. Uh, the biggest thing is, soon as a company knows that they want out of the business, they need to go ahead and file the MCS 150 showing that they are out of business. So therefore, if they are selected for an audit, if they do have a 150 on file previous to contact with the investigator, then they can have that to show, hey, we've already applied. We're shutting this company down. But if you let it linger on till after contact, then it kind of shows that, well, maybe they're hiding something, and we're really going to push to get that audit through.
Right. I had a case when company was out of business and they filled in the MCS 150 form. So they weren't operating for 6 months and they still had an audit. So the auditor from Indiana came and he said, well, you have no choice but to go through this audit. And he found a lot of violations, even though they didn't operate, they didn't run the truck. The drivers didn't work for this company any longer. So he found a lot of violations, and the state issued them a lot of fines like that. But the auditor was so confident. He was like, "No, you have to do it, otherwise you're gonna have a problem with the law." So he kind of scared them into doing this audit. So it was about 5 years ago. So I don't know if it's what it is right now, but it was quite interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. Uh, I mean, I'd have to go in and look and see if FMCSA has anything that kind of gives you a timeline. But I know as an investigator, I mean, if I get assigned a company and then I look at it and it shows that, hey, a month ago they sent it their 150 and they're closing everything down, then I'm going to push to try to just get it, taken off my list, because they're showing that they deactivated everything. And but I mean, you can still push to go in and look at things, because I mean, these companies, even though you're going out of business, you're supposed to keep certain records for certain amount of time. So there still is things to look at.
So it depends on the auditor, right? Like if
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be left up to the auditor. I mean, without looking to see FMCSA's guidance on that, I couldn't be exactly right on that. But I know if I seen that a company's DOT number was inactive, or that they had applied to go out of business, then I would push to just get it taken off my list.
All right. I want to talk about data queues a little bit, because that's been a big part of your assistance to AIST safety team as a consultant. You working very closely with our data queues team on trying to challenge some of the violations or crashes. So, how did that feel to sort of be on the other side of things? Because I know you used to work as data queues analyst for the state.
I mean, it was definitely. I mean, it took a little getting used to. Uh, I see some of the pains that companies have now when you're trying to relay a message to an analyst and they're not really seeing your message of what you're asking them to truly look at. I can see the pain there. I've seen a struggle of. I know they can pull a little more information for us than they let on, to help us out on some of them. But yeah, it's been a fun turnaround for me, I guess you'd say.
And probably, well, you firsthand experience how much uh, like human factor plays a role there, right? Like uh, how much depends on who you're dealing with as a person in data queues disputes, right? Like
Yeah,
who
yeah.
is
I mean,
analyzing your requests on the state side.
yeah, it definitely. I mean, because the three of us could look at the same violation and see it, kind of three ways. So yeah, it's a lot of human factor in the data queue.
FMCSA published a notice announcing big changes to data queues process. And specifically, one of the things that are going to change is the inspecting officers will not have the final say anymore in denying a request. Right. So if officer thinks that the request will be denied, it would need to go for approval to a third party within the same state agency, but not the inspector themselves. So, do you see it as a positive change, or is that just gonna complicate things?
No, I think it should be a positive. I think it'll be positive all the way around. Uh, I've always pushed for or thought that data queue analysts probably don't even really need to always be tied with the enforcement agency, that you need kind of an outside set of eyes to look at it unbiased, because mistakes can happen. But when you're calling out a certain when you're calling out inspectors and officers about how well they do their job, it's always a tough issue. And I mean, a lot of pride comes into play there. So I've always thought that, I mean, anytime that maybe have officers review them at first, but then if it's if it's something that needs to go and let a third party look at it, I don't see a problem at all in that.
With all those new changes that are being thrown at pretty much every state agency just across the board in the US, like new laws being passed about non-domiciled CDLs, English language, just everything else. If when you speak to your former colleagues at Kentucky State Police, how do they feel? Are they just coping with it? Are they overwhelmed? Are they supportive of the changes?
I think overall they're pretty supportive of it. I mean, like anything else, it's tough to, if you've done it one way for so long and then you get new regulations and changes to regulations, it kind of takes a it's kind of like a learning curve for everybody, for drivers, for enforcement officers. Everybody just kind of gets used to it. When I was when I was still working, I remember when the CSA 2010 came out, and I mean, we were getting all those questions about that, and then they delayed that, and it just took a little getting used to. I think they're prepared for it, but I mean, there will be, I'm sure there'll be some hiccups here and there and uh, some issues, but I think everybody's prepared. I think all in all, for some reason, it seems like the trucking industry is in the spotlight a little more right now than it has been in the past. So I think that enforcement is going to be pushed all across the country. I think stricter enforcement, uh, more enforcement officers on the road. I just think all that. I mean, with the changes to the regulation, I think that enforcement altogether is going to be stricter going forward.
And because it's going to be stricter, what are the recommendations? What would you recommend for a tracking company to avoid a compliance review or investigation?
Uh, I think the biggest thing that a company needs to do is they need to, especially when they start out, they need to realize the importance of compliance and safety and put that into their budget, and don't look at it as just a part of the overall. the overall process is you got like, your fees to keep the truck maintenance and keep it on the road, your fees for your drivers to keep them, driving. And then you also have to have a budget for your compliance and safety because, that can put you out of business just as quick as not having drivers or not having trucks is not being in compliance. So getting a getting a early grasp on understanding the regulations, following the regulations, and getting a good process of keeping compliant is the biggest advice I would give a new carrier.
Yeah, I completely agree because a lot of times when company tries to save or cut corners on safety, it usually always backfires.
Yeah.
In the long term, especially, it comes back to you. So that's a great advice. Yeah, don't make a budget, like Lucas pointed out, and stick to that budget.
Yeah, because too many carriers, they'll try to avoid certain regulations or overlook this, and a lot of times, I mean, the companies don't understand that if you don't have the means to have somebody dedicated daily, weekly to make sure that your company is in compliant, then it's going to be a struggle in the trucking industry. I mean, you got a budget to have someone that's keeping eyes on your company every day, every week, and especially keeping up to date with regulation changes and things. Because if you just look at something when you first get your DOT number, you don't know that, I mean, 6 months from now, it might be completely different. So, I mean, it's always important to budget for compliance, and then if you need, reach out, get the proper help that you need to continue being compliant.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Lucas, again for being with us. I'm sure that's not the last time we speak. Very good to have insight firsthand, and you're sharing your great expertise and experience with us and our viewers. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Lucas.
Oh, thank you
It was
guys.
very informative. A
Yep.
lot of good information. All right, thanks everyone.